Hi there, this is Ziebart with Plant-Based for Life. Thank you so much for joining us for quick cooking classes. Today we are going to be talking about tacos. We're going to be talking about the taco shell, all of the beautiful and delicious things that you can put in a taco, as well as some of the sides. So if you are watching this live with me right now, we're calling this Taco Tuber Tuesday. And if you're watching it as the recording, I recommend to both sets of folks that you get out a pen and paper, because some of these, actually a lot of these things, are not recipes. They are just, how I cook on a daily basis. And I'm going to be throwing you a lot of tips and tricks and all sorts of suggestions to make your cooking life as easy as possible. So with that in mind, I will join you in a moment in the kitchen. Hi there. You are in Ziebart's kitchen. So these are my real pots and pans. You can see they've been well loved. They have a little bit of use on them, but I just want to show you in my real life kitchen with my real life pots and pans and my real life stove, how I cook things. You know, it seems it's a little bit easy to do these things when it's all set up, but I just want to show you how I actually get this done. So what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm going to give you some ideas for what to put in your taco. And then we're going to actually do some dry sauteing. I'm actually going to cook up some veggies here for you and some mushrooms, which will be the live version of what I'm preparing today. I'm also going to show you some things that I prepared ahead of time, different options for what you can actually put in as your meat. Little air quotes there, right? So today we're going to do some peppers and onions, and some portobello mushrooms. This is an excellent idea for tacos, but also for things like fajitas. This would be a great combination for fajitas. Now, today I'm going to be using a taco seasoning mix, but I'm also, for those of you who are on the email list and are watching live today, you will be getting the recipe for my husband's taco seasoning recipe, and a whole bunch of others, because I have a whole sheet of paper with lots of different seasoning mixes that you can make yourself. That's really, really easy. But I wanted to show you, if even easier, Mrs. Dash. So Mrs. Dash makes lots of salt-free seasoning mixes, over 30 of them. So this is one that I use, but there is something in here that I want you to be mindful of. Even if it's a trusted brand, even if it sounds like it should be healthy, you should be reading the back. Always, always, always read those ingredients. Now, this particular mixture has cornstarch in it. It also has sugar in it. So these are things that you might need to avoid. Now, sugar is a real tough one for me, so I avoid it at all costs. So make sure that you read those ingredients. In terms of other kinds of mushrooms, any kind of sliced mushroom would be great in a taco. You just saute it up. Remember, mushrooms always need to be cooked. I also have a special mushroom to show you today, and that is the oyster mushroom. This little funky devil. It looks kind of interesting. Let me just break off a piece here because I want to show you something special about this kind of mushroom. When you marinate it, you have to make sure you season these things, or else they're not going to taste like much. You see the way it's kind of stringy? This is perfect for making shredded things. So if you want to make like a shredded chicken substitute or a shredded pork substitute, this is an excellent option. Remember to marinate it, season it, flavor it, and then my best recommendation for most things is to bake it, but mushrooms are so high in water, they do really well in the pan as well on the stovetop. Again, if you have any questions for those of you watching live, feel free to pop in and go ahead and ask, and I'm happy to be interrupted. Now, if you are interested in a raw taco, this is an excellent option. Now, it's going to sound a little bit weird, but walnuts are an excellent substitute for ground beef. What I would do is I would get my homemade taco seasoning mix. Oops, or you can cheat a little bit if you need to. Homemade taco seasoning mix, and then just pulse it in the food processor until it is roughly the texture of ground beef. This is really great raw. You really don't need to warm it up. You can if you'd like. And I have actually made this using cabbage leaves as my taco shell. And I put roasted red peppers and sauerkraut in it. I know it sounds bizarre, avocado, and it is absolutely delicious. Don't knock it till you tried it. Okay, let me give you some more traditional standard options. Soy curls are my new obsession. So soy curls, these are sort of the best version of you know, kind of dried or packaged soy product, because these ones are made with whole soybeans. If you buy something like textured vegetable protein or something like that, those are processed ingredients. So this is a better option, and it's very easy to use. You soak it in water for 10 minutes. You can pan fry it on the stovetop, but I actually prefer it in the oven. And I'm going to show you, I made some earlier today, and I'm going to show you what those look like. Can you see that? So what's lovely is that it's still chewy, but there's some crispy bits too, which I really enjoy. So you have that caramelization. For the, remember, you always got to flavor these things. These plain, I did try them plain when I made them the first time. They have a very light flavor, a little bit nutty. It's actually quite pleasant, but definitely could use some oomph. So I added some coconut aminos to these. So that gives it a slightly teriyaki kind of a taste. And maybe that's not a traditional taco seasoning, but I like it. So do what you like. You can add, of course, any kind of seasoning that you like. You could do chipotle, you could do taco seasoning, anything that floats your boat. One of my favorite all-purpose meat substitute fillings is tofu ground beef. This stuff is amazing. I use it for lots of different things. It's awesome in spaghetti sauce. I've used it for nachos, lovely baked potatoes. So if you have watched these cooking demonstrations before, you have received this recipe. If you missed out on that, send me an email. I'll put it in the chat toward the end, where you can send me an email to make sure that you're getting these delicious recipes if you don't have them. Okay, so as far as the fillings go, you know, there are lots of other options. There is jackfruit. Now, this is green jackfruit that you buy in, obviously, a can. If you buy fresh jackfruit, it's not going to have the same texture or flavor. This stuff really doesn't have much of a flavor, but what it does have is the ability to look like shredded pork or chicken, and then you just season it appropriately. So what I do with this is I simmer it in my seasoning, you know, my no chicken seasoning, or, you know, some sort of other seasoning blend for 20 minutes. You want to get it so that most of the water is gone, and then add it to whatever you're going to add it to. Now, let's talk a little bit about the shell, the delivery system. So I have some traditional delivery systems here. Corn tortillas. Corn tortillas are perfectly healthy and perfectly acceptable as part of a whole food plant-based diet. They, what you're looking for is just corn. You just want to have corn and nothing else in them if possible. So these are on a bit of parchment paper because I want to show you a trick. So you can see these are soft. Now, what you can do is you can put them in the oven. Now, not on parchment paper, just put them in the oven and drape them over the rack. Drape them over the rack, and they will turn into crispy shells for you. So what you want to do is about 425 for 5 to 10 minutes. You got to watch them though. You don't want them to burn. And if you cook them too long, they'll actually close up on you like a little clam. So these are nice and crispy and not deep fried, which is what those are that you buy crispy at the store. So this is a much better option. And it's a lot of fun. It has more personality too. Now, as far as these go, if you want a flat but crispy tortilla like a tostada, you can actually pop this in the oven like I did with the other, but a really fast and easy way to create a crunchy taco that's flat is to throw it in the microwave. I know it sounds odd. 3.5 to 4 minutes is what my microwave takes. You might have to play with it a little bit on yours, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. My microwave is right above you. I'm going to pop them in there for 3.5 minutes, and you will see in a moment what I'm talking about. While those cook away, let me show you some other options. Ezekiel makes a lovely brand of a lovely version of sprouted grain tortillas. These are excellent. You can also pop these in the microwave and they will get crispy on you. So I really enjoy these. These are a bit heartier than a typical tortilla. So if you want them soft, you should heat them, in a pan, flip, or pop them in the microwave for about 10 seconds just to soften them up. They do have a tendency to break up a little bit if you don't eat them right away. So what I do is I store these in the freezer, and they actually pop apart quite nicely. So you pop them out, 1 or 2 or 3 or however many you'd like, pop them in the microwave for 10 to 20 seconds just to soften them up, and they'll stay nice and fresh for you. So this is another option. Ezekiel also makes a pita pocket. So these are fantastic as well. Not really a traditional taco kind of thing, but sort of similar in that it looks like the pocket of a taco. So this is another option that you can use. You can warm them up, toast them. I like to pop these in the toaster, and they just get a little bit crispy on the edges and then warm, which is quite nice. Now, I have one more option that I want to show you. This is a recipe that I shared with the group last week, and this is lentil flatbread. You see, it just sort of looks like a little crepe. It's a little bit thicker. You can make it thinner if you like. It is very sturdy. These store really, really well. And the only ingredient in here is lentils, red lentils, and water. And they are, so you're getting your beans in. Lentils are very, very healthy for you. These are a fantastic way to, if you're trying to swap out some of your breaded sort of items, this is a great thing to do, either sweet or savory. So when you just do the red lentils and water, it doesn't taste like anything. So for this one, I added a capful of a no salt seasoning blend, as well as a couple tablespoons of black cumin, which I quite like the savoriness of it. It's very light, but it's also very, very healthy. It has health benefits. So that's what I did with these. But you can also do it sweet. So add some cinnamon, add some, other kind of warming spices, pumpkin spice, clove, whatever it is you like. Some sliced bananas, some sliced apples, maybe a little bit of nut butter. It's delicious. So these things are very versatile. You can make them on the stovetop or in the oven. And just make sure that you store them in an airtight container in the fridge, or pop them in the freezer if you want to make a lot and use them a little bit at a time. Now, so those are, really kind of very conventional taco shells, but you can use lots of different things as your taco shell. In the store, you can actually buy jicama wraps. This is actually jicama, and it is thinly sliced into round shapes. So that is an option. There goes our tostadas. Okay, so you can see, maybe a little bit too long, but you can see these are nice and crispy. So as I was saying, I'm just going to let these cool for just a second so they don't burn me. That you can use vegetables, like green leafy vegetables. Use something sturdy like a collard green or a Swiss chard, or as I mentioned earlier, a cabbage leaf. There are a lot of different options that you can use. If you're trying to, be very angelic with your tacos, then you can use something like that. I've also used romaine sort of single leaves as kind of a boat, and you just chow down on them that way. So I want to show you these crispy. So as I said, I was using my microwave earlier, so it is a little bit too warm. So it burned these just a little bit. Isn't that fun when you're doing live stuff? This kind of thing happens. But you can see that you can make these in your microwave and they get very, very crunchy. And then you put your toppings on top and you have a lovely tostada. Just play with the settings a little bit. You can always do more time. It's really hard to go backwards. So start with 2.5 or 3 minutes and keep adding 20 or 30 seconds until you get your desired crispiness. Any questions or thoughts so far before we move on? Okay, so let us go ahead and get sauteing. So I'm going to preheat this at medium or medium high. Now, some people will say go straight to high, but I'm going to tell you you're much more likely to burn your things if you go straight to high. I cook a lot of stuff on high because I'm impatient. So, but I highly recommend you start with a medium high pan, no hotter than that as you're getting started. When you get really practiced at dry sauteing or sauteing with veggie stock or water, then you can, up your game a little bit by turning up that heat. So what you want to do when you're ready to, when this pan is preheated, we'll just give it a couple of minutes while we chat for a second, is cook your highest water items first. Now, these are all high water items. Onions are very high in water. Mushrooms are high in water, as well as peppers. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the onions in first because I would like to get them just a smidge caramelized. So you're going to want to, let this preheat for a few minutes, which we're not going to do today. Just so you know, it should, when it hits the pan, sizzle, and it's not doing that. So the other way that you can check to see if it's ready to go, oh, we got a little sizzle there, is just splash just a drop of water or veggie stock to make sure the pan is hot enough. Now we got some sizzle going. All right. So this is the way that I chop them. You can chop them any way you like. I sort of like the uniformity of having your food all sort of the relatively the same shape and size. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is not touch it. Don't touch it until it has cooked a little bit and started to release some of its water. So I'm just going to spread this out a little bit so that it's cooking evenly, but just give it a minute to start to cook. As soon as you can see that it's starting to either brown a little bit if you're on high heat, or if it's starting to look like it's sticking just a little bit, or it's starting to release and soften, starting to get a little bit translucent on you, then you can start to stir it. But until then, just give it a minute. Now, this is especially true for mushrooms. Mushrooms will stick to the pan if you don't allow them to start to release their water a little bit. So make sure to just leave it alone for a minute. Now, that being said, when you're dry sauteing or water sauteing, it's really not a good idea to walk away from your pan. It's really not a good idea to do that anyways, but really especially when you're dry sauteing or water sauteing. So this is starting to smell really, really good. Now you can add, other kinds of veggies, garlic, all that kind of thing. It's up to you. What I would suggest is that you add your garlic at the very, very end so that it doesn't burn on you. Okay, I'm just going to stir this a little bit so you can see what's happening. See, we're starting to get a little bit of caramelization there. And the water, you can see the onions are a bit shinier. The water is starting to release, so it shouldn't stick to the pan. But we have our handy dandy veggie stock right here in case it does. If you do need to add some veggie stock or water, do it about a tablespoon at a time. You don't want to go overboard, or you're going to be boiling your vegetables, which is not what we're going for here. We want, we want them cooked. We want a little caramelization. We want to just get the most flavor out of this. So I'm just going to cook my onions just for a minute. Remember, they're going to continue cooking as I add in the other vegetables. You don't want to overdo it here. Just a minute or two. You can see they're already starting to brown. Now I want to show you something. See how the brown is a little bit on the bottom of the pan? This is an opportunity to add a little bit of water or veggie stock just to lift that up. You don't need it for the non-stick thing, but just to get some of that flavor. So that's an opportunity to splash a little bit in and then just run the veggies over top of that. You saw how little I added. Do not go overboard. Again, we don't want to boil our veggies. We want these onions to get nice and caramelized, which they are doing. And I have to tell you, they smell fantastic. Okay, so I am going to add the mushrooms next because these mushrooms are very thick. These are portobello mushrooms. They've been sliced and their stems removed. stems removed and then sliced. And so I'm going to add these now because I'm going to want them to sit for a minute so that they start to release their water, as I said. So just spread them out in the pan so they cook evenly. Now, because the mushroom is sort of the main ingredient here, this is where you kind of want to add some seasoning. So as I said, I'm going to use the taco seasoning here. Have one open. A tablespoon or two. If you want more flavor, that's entirely up to you. But I like to just sprinkle it a little bit at a time. And then once I start to mix them, I will sprinkle a little bit more. So I want to make sure that it gets coated everywhere and that the seasoning doesn't interfere with the cooking. So I'm just kind of pushing the mushrooms down to make sure that they are in contact with the bottom of the pan. You want to take a minute and make sure that these mushrooms start to soften and start to release their water. That is going to take a second. Any thoughts or questions as we're waiting here? Don't forget, you can pop your comments or questions in the Q&A or chat. So if we were using a smaller mushroom, this would take less time, but this is going to take a minute. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that we can put inside of our tacos. So this is our sort of live preparation for what we're making today. So it's going to be onions, portobello mushrooms, taco seasoning, and then some peppers. And you can even add some spicy peppers if you're into that sort of thing. This is just a jalapeno, the humble little jalapeno. You can add this. I prefer to add a few slices of it raw at the very end because I don't love jalapenos. I am not a spicy girl, but my husband is. So that is also an option for you. Thank you for the question, Judith. Yes, I have used frozen mushrooms before. Frozen is actually really fantastic because when they're frozen, they've already started to break down a little bit and they have excess water in them because of the freezing process. And so they cook up really, really nicely and very, very quickly. Frozen mushrooms are excellent to add to soups and things like that. Remember, you still have to cook those. You still have to cook the frozen mushrooms, but that would be perfectly fine to do here. The only trick for something like this would be if you want some caramelization to your onions, or I'm sorry, your mushrooms, then you might have to cook them just a little bit longer to cook out some of that water. What is it? Absolutely, absolutely. Martha's asking if you can use how do you make them? Okay. So the lentil flatbread recipe is actually very, very straightforward, but it is in the email. So if you got the email last week, it's in there. There's a version where you bake it, and there's a version where you cook it on the pan. If you would like any recipes, of course, feel free to email me. I will post my email in the chat at the end of our session here. But I'm going to give it to you really, really quickly because it's actually very, very simple. 2 cups of water, 1 cup of red lentils. It has to be red. Soak those for at least 4 hours. Soak them for 4 hours. Blend them in a blender until they're smooth. And then you cook them like crepes or like little thin pancakes. Or you can spread them on parchment paper in the oven and cook them. Now, you're going to want to watch them in the oven because depending on how thin you spread that, they might cook faster than the instructions say. So keep an eye on it, check it halfway through, and make sure to, get it to the browning, or because it will actually get crispy if you leave it in there long enough, and eventually burn as well. So you got to kind of keep an eye on that in the oven. So very, very easy. 2 cups of water, 1 cup of red lentils, let it soak for at least 4 hours. Throw it in a blender blend it until it's very, very smooth, and then just use that pitcher of your blender as to pour that batter into a pan on the stove, or to spread it on parchment paper on a cookie sheet, preferably a cookie sheet that has sides. Okay, this is starting to smell really, really good. So let me just tend to this a moment. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and add the peppers.
Now, I like my onions nice and caramelized, but if you want them lighter, you can add these sooner. That is entirely up to you. Now, remember, when it comes to food, we eat with our eyes first. So we should have lots and lots of colors in here. This is the sort of thing that I would add maybe some cherry tomatoes to, maybe some corn, lots of different colors that will, and you can see the way the mushrooms are starting to shrink and soften. We even have a little caramelization there. That is exactly what we're looking for. I'm gonna go ahead and sprinkle a little bit more seasoning on there. Onions are sticking just a smidge to the pan, so I'm just gonna give this a swoop and then stir those veggies around to get that caramelization off the bottom of the pan. Okay, what was the next question? The sweet part? Oh, the seed part. Yeah, so when if you're using the canned jackfruit, it can have just a little underdeveloped seed, so you can actually eat it. But if you don't like the taste, when I used to make it in the beginning, I would just cut off the very end. So just do a little triangle cut of that little seed bit, and then use the rest of it, and it'll actually break up easier for you. Okay, I am loving this. I like my veggies to be a little bit crunchy. If you would like them cooked down more than this, then feel free to do that. But I'm actually really happy with the way that turned out. So you can see it smells amazing. It smells really, really good. Let me just grab, turning off my heat. Let's get you a little zoom in on that deliciousness. So mushrooms, when you cook them, they are savory all by themselves. And so that is lovely. That gives you umami flavor without having to add any seasoning. But definitely season this up. Season it up with spicy stuff. If you like spicy, remember, I'm a spice wuss. So this is pretty much as spicy as I get. Smoked paprika. This is a great thing to add if you like the smokiness without too much spicy. Another one I like a little bit of is like a chipotle seasoning. This is an excellent one. It is smoky. It is a little bit spicy, so I don't use too much of it. But if you like spice, then go nuts with this stuff. This is really, really good stuff. Remember, if you're on the email list, you're going to get the sheet of all the seasoning mixes that you can make yourself, so you know exactly what's in them. So let's look at some fresh ingredients to add. As I was saying before, cherry tomatoes, this is an excellent thing to have. So when you combine cooked foods with fresh foods, these are brighter, these are warm and savory and yummy. But when you add fresh foods, you brighten up the whole thing. You make a lot of contrast in your food, which is really good. Texture and flavor contrast makes your food more interesting. What we want to stay away from is blandness. So we have some, actually those were sweet onions. I really like sweet onions, but you can also add some fresh green onions. That's an excellent thing to add if you really love the onion flavor. As I was mentioning before, I love to add corn. I think that is such a fun thing. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to toss some corn in here. It's already cooked, so it doesn't need to cook. It'll just warm with our mixture. If you're not interested in doing a lot of cooking, you can also use a jarred roasted red pepper. These are very, very flavorful. Just make sure that you are reading those ingredients. Sometimes they put sugar and things in them where they really don't need that. They're plenty flavorful without those extra SOS type ingredients. We also have hot sauce. Of course, you know this is not for me. So this is a Verde hot sauce, green. My husband loves this one. We also have a red one. We just have to be a little bit careful with hot sauce. If you like a lot of hot sauce, watch the sodium because it can get crazy. There are places online where you can order sodium-free ones. We haven't been able to find them recently, but you know, keep an eye out, and they definitely exist. A couple of weeks ago, we did a sour cream recipe. This is the plant-based sour cream. Very, very simple recipe. Again, if you weren't there for that, let me know and I'll send it to you. This is silken tofu, 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. I actually use plum vinegar because that's what I had. And 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, a half a teaspoon of, sorry, I had to look. Oh, a teaspoon of garlic powder. Now you can also use raw garlic clove in this, but when I made it with the raw garlic clove, and I love garlic, it was a little too much. So if you ever want to swap out raw garlic for powdered garlic, remember not garlic salt, garlic powder, then it's 1 teaspoon for 1 clove. So this is lovely to add. You can even find plant-based cheesy sauces, which we didn't do today because we're doing a lot of stuff and I didn't want to add one more thing, but I do have 2 cheesy sauce recipes that I can send you if you're interested. And of course, avocado. Who doesn't love avocado? This is excellent if you're trying to get away from cheese. This gives you luscious, that beautiful fat that is also very, very good for you. And it gives you that texture that is creamy and just luscious and velvety. So I highly recommend adding some avocado. Again, when you're trying to brighten flavors, adding some lemon or lime is a great idea. Quick tip. These little limes, I love them because they're very flavorful, but they can be very, very hard. So if you have a tough lime or lemon or basically any citrus fruit that you want to get the juice out of, roll it on your cooking board first before you cut that up. Okay, so that is the taco filling portion of the quick cooking class today. I'm going to talk a little bit about sides now because tacos are great, but there's also some delectable sides that go with them. Now, I have made in my Instant Pot, you can also do it on the stovetop in a regular pot, some brown rice that I've turned into a Spanish rice. I'm using air quotes because it's really not traditional. I have had Spanish speaking friends that made true Spanish rice, and it was an involved process. So what I do is I take 1 of the cups of water that you would add to your brown rice while it's cooking, and I swap that out for a little jar of salsa. I know it sounds kind of basic and kind of simple, but I'm telling you, it is absolutely fantastically delicious. No exaggeration there. And it looks beautiful too, which I will show you in just a little bit. The other side I wanted to do today, get this stovetop going. I'm actually going to put this on high because I'm going to show you what I'm doing here. I like this pan. It's actually a wok pan because it is round and has kind of a bowl bottom, and I'll explain why in just a moment. So we're going to make some refried beans. Again, not traditional at all, but super, super quick and very, very, very easy. So I have 2 cans. Oops. I have 2 cans of pinto beans here. And I don't want them drained. I want all that lovely aquafaba in there. Remember, the bean juice that beans cook in, if you cook these on your stove top, you can use that water. But if you're buying beans in a can, just use the water that they come in. Just throw that whole thing in there, just like that. Throw the whole thing in. And I'm going to do 2 because that's typically what we do. 2 cans. Now, simmer this as long as you have patience for. I normally don't do more than a few minutes. Now, it's not very flavorful just like this. So what I do is I add a tablespoon of onion powder, a tablespoon of garlic powder. Now, if you wanted to get a little fancier, then you could saute up some onion and garlic first and then add your beans to it. But we're doing quick and easy today. So I'm going to go ahead and add my tablespoon of onion powder and garlic powder. Yes, very good suggestion. Whoever suggested that, gold star. Judith suggested, thank you, Judith, that you make sure that your beans are no salt added and BPA lining free. And there's lots of options out there, really tons of options at the store and online if you can't find them at the store. So, onion and garlic is great, but I'm also going to add a little bit of extra seasoning. I love this one from Costco, but there's plenty of others out there. Mrs. Dash, as I said, has over 30 seasoning blends. This one is an excellent one as well, garlic and herb. I like this one a lot, and I use this one quite a bit. But today we're going to use the Costco's no salt brand. And just do a capful. There we go. So you just want to simmer this for 5 minutes at least. If you can do longer, these flavors will marry better and they'll just get more and more delicious. So as long as you have patience for it, just keep simmering it. So because we don't want to spend 5 minutes just staring at this pan, I'm going to show you what I do next. If you have an immersion blender, one of these dandy little hand blenders, this is fantastic. Then you can just make sure you turn off the heat so you're not spraying hot liquid into your face. Be very, very careful and immerse your blender before you start it, and then just go ahead and blend. Now, I'm not going to talk while this is on because it's a little loud, but you can see what I do and I'll explain after. Okay, so as I was turning it around, just tip it just a little bit and make sure you get all of those beans in there. Now you can see these are a little bit watery because we didn't let it simmer long enough, but something to keep in mind when you're making these, if you don't plan to serve them right away, they will dry out on you. So you want to leave them a little bit more watery if you're not going to serve them immediately. But you can see glorious refried beans. Now these are a little bit chunky. If you would like them smoother, you can make them as smooth as you like, but they are glorious and such an awesome flavor. The other seasoning I really like to add again is that black seed cumin, just grind it up in your coffee grinder. All right. Give me just a moment. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to pop them in now. I'm going to go ahead and plate this up. I'll be right with you. And there you have it. This is the Spanish rice, the cheater Spanish rice. As you can see, it looks very, very convincing. There's my slightly runny refried beans. Remember, those will tighten up if you simmer it just a little bit longer. And there are my taco shells with our lovely taco seasoning or taco fixings inside. Remember, you can add anything you like. Don't forget to include your favorite salsa. Also, sliced avocado, any other cilantro, anything that you like, make sure to add to that as well. So that's Taco 2 for Tuesday. This is our quick cooking classes. I want to thank you so, so much for watching today.